health, well-being, mental health, it's something that's massive across all of our industries. It's every part of our society, and I'm really privileged to be able to speak to a good friend of mine all the way from over the ditch in New Zealand. Let's get stuck in right now, and we'll spend some more time with health and wellness expert Matt Vaughan. Let's get stuck back in. Matt, hey, thank you very much, mate, for making yourself available and jumping on to another podcast, mate. I really appreciate your time and effort as always.
No worries, Jace. I see you couldn't help it. You even gave the old New Zealand accent a bit of a crack as well.
Yeah, so absolutely, mate. It's we always like to have a bit of fun. It's one of those things, mate, where we love to have the Anzac spirit live and well. Just maybe not talking too much rugby at the moment, though. All right, mate, let's dive in if we can. Obviously, your background, you know, being a Kiwi, and you were great with the cricket and the rugby. You moved over to the UK, and you're playing in England and Scotland, and then you came back to Melbourne. You spent many years in Melbourne. Started to get really heavy into the health and wellness areas. You know, you've got a lot more of a sort of an avenue and passion and expertise for building teams, working in corporate health and wellness, and, you know, really getting the best out of people. And I really wanted to be able to dive into that aspect first and foremost, if that's okay.
Yeah, mate, rip into it. I'm pumped, mate. So
awesome.
You ask the questions, I'll fire some answers, and then we'll see if we can come up with a good score at the end of it.
I love it. All right. So if we stop and talk about teams, obviously we know the importance of team development. I know that and we spoke about this last time that we chatted as well, about obviously working the team and the culture, building people up and empowering people. Really wanting to sort of dive in and I guess sort of poke that bear a little bit in that. What sort of exact strategies do you find best to be able to empower people? You know, do you work one-on-one with people? How do you work with behavioral profiles, people's personalities? I'd really like to be able to sort of explore that as sort of some of the avenues of how people can, you know, learn from you and your strategies and get more out of their own teams and people.
Yeah. You know, that's a really good question as well, mate, because I guess it's really easy to talk to because I've been doing this for some time now. And in terms of what we do within our business, we've sort of personalized the corporate wellness sector. And by saying that, yes, we do the group stuff. Absolutely. I think it's really important because when you get a collective group together and you start talking about health and well-being and different avenues from different aspects, obviously the holistic will look at it as well, you know, not just nutrition, not just exercise, you know, talking about spirituality and culture as well, which is a huge one. You know, there's so many different, you know, emotional health, the works. What we do is we do the whole lunch and learn thing, which is, you know, say a 60-minute topic on health and well-being that was suited to your team. And I say that because so many teams have their own stuff going on. And I honestly mean that. Obviously, COVID has blanketed the industry for the last 2 and a bit years. It's easy to talk about things like stress management, the effects of stress. And it's easy to talk about that for the fact is, you know, in the last 2 years, stress in itself has gone from 23.5% within workplaces to 66%. So crazy, absolutely huge. And, you know, and in New Zealand alone, that was costing New Zealand businesses $1.79 billion over that period between 2017 and 2019. They haven't even got a figure for what the current stats is costing because you can't count that much.
Yeah, they can't quantify that, can they? That's
not yet. We'll
and that's really
that
scary when you think about it. You know, it's and I might just sort of dive sideways just for a second. Like for myself personally, in the last few months, particularly at the back end of last year, right before Christmas and that type of stuff, I was finding that I was having a lot more, they were just personal discussions with a lot of health and also several leading medicals and specialists, etc. But the interesting, and I do that all the time. I look really good on that relationship management side of things personally. But what I actually found within a space of sort of 3 or 4 weeks, I actually had, there was 2 in particular about 2 or 3 days apart that really stopped me in my tracks and made me think about this. They actually said to me when I was leaving, they were like, "Hey, thanks for basically counseling me." When it was first said, I was like, I sort of went, that's interesting. That's sort of weird. And then 2 days later, I got almost exactly the same thing saying, "Feels like a great counseling session that we've just done. You know, thanks for being listening." And I sort of remember looking again, and these are people I have a huge amount of respect for and are very well known in the medical industry. And it was both of them for 48 hours apart. And it really made me stop and think that so many people in the health and medical industry right now as well have been doing it pretty tough. You know, they have been the stalwarts of staying open, working with the COVID scenarios, etc. And even though there was lockdowns and restrictions in Australia, New Zealand, etc., it's really been the health and medical community that's had to stand up and be there and do everything. And it really made me, I think, probably appreciate the fact more than ever that this is probably something we need to be a lot more acutely aware of, because there are a lot more stresses and a lot more anxieties and unknowns and a lot of different avenues that us as the professionals and experts and leaders, probably we're the ones leading it and doing it, right? If that makes sense. But we also need our own support. We also need our own help. We also need to be able to gel together, because, you know, if we're not getting that support, yet we're providing it to everyone else, it can be a bit of a slippery slope for all of us personally as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. And just to touch on that, I've coached numerous doctors, nurses, you know, and they come to me because I've got a skill set they don't have.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same reason that people go to a mechanic to fix their car, or they need a builder to come and fix their house. It's because they've got a skill set, which is their skill set, and they are very, very good at it. Yeah. And you mentioned before about, you know, counseling. Look, I do the same thing with my business. I do one-on-one coaching. So you can jump on a body composition scan and you can get 25 different metrics of where you are physically. But the thing is, I say you don't need to jump on that, because I know how personal it is. You know, some people just come in and the only thing they want to do is dump a little bit of their stress off, and all we need to do is listen.
Yeah.
And when you listen, people feel that. They don't see it, they actually feel it. And like, you know, you mentioned something in our last podcast is about how you make them feel, and that's exactly it. Connecting, making people feel like they're in a safe space is super important, because you can just see them, their shoulders drop, you know, they're less tense. And with that, they've got more clarity. And when you've got clarity in life, you know where you're going. Before that, it's a haze. And if you're in a haze, you don't have to go left, right, or up or down. And it's a tough place to be for individuals and also for companies and collectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I suppose I always like to look at these scenarios, you know, like COVID, you know, it's real, it's there, it's everything. It's been a crisis, it's a global pandemic, and all the, you know, the catchphrases and words and the way we've expressed it. But I always look in these situations and I always say that whenever we have a crisis, it equals a danger plus an opportunity. And yes, there's obviously imminent danger, health, you know, everything like that. But COVID, I think, is also a lot of dangers around economies and, you know, political aspirations for people and, you know, the health systems, and there's a lot of stuff. But I also think in many respects, we have really adapted quite well and created a lot of sort of new opportunities in that avenue as well. And I think I'm pretty proud of, you know, I mean, Australia and New Zealand, you know, in particular, we've done a really good job of identifying some of the health aspects, the personal well-being aspects, the mental health side of things. Have we been perfect with it? No, we haven't. We're far from it, and there's a lot of work to be done. But I think we've able to be embraced, and that opportunity we've been able to see how much more we need to be clear about where we're going. We've got to be able to, you know, connect with people more. I think it's really shown a lot of everyone about how much personal relationships actually mean to so many people. You and that so much of change that has to happen with people must happen with themselves personally before, it's not an algorithm that you can write something down and they just follow through each of these steps. Like, you spoke about the strength and conditioning or doing composition scan. There can be a lot of numbers. It can be a lot of that transactional type scenario. But I think for me, one of the biggest opportunities that most people have taken, and those that haven't probably need to work a little bit more into this, is the fact that we need to make a lot more avenues personal. It's about emotional connections. It's about the feel. People have been desperate to connect, particularly with lockdowns. They can't connect. And so much of that for everyone's well-being needs to be in place. But I've also found that that's also one of the best ways to get your own business or professional pursuits moving forward as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I want to throw out another C word as well, actually, because you're talking about connect and so forth and all that stuff. And one of the biggest things, and when you're talking around stress, is around compartmentalization. Your ability not to take your work stress home, and that's one of the big things that I talk about as well, because far out, so many people over the last 2 years have really struggled with that instinct, because so many of us, our house is our workplace.
Yeah.
And we have not put the barrier between our workplace and our home. And with that, it's actually created some poor environments to be in. And that's a huge one. And
Absolutely.
Again, like I said, about getting that haze away, making more clarity, telling people that this is actually happening, it's a real thing, has been one of our learnt things that we've had to do over time.
Yeah,
so compartmentalization, dumping your work stress, and then going into your home, your family, and making sure that you don't pass that on is a huge one we need to work on.
And it's so simple though, right? That's the ironic thing about it. It's, for years we were, trying to teach people to put the laptop down, leave the stuff on the desk at work and leave it at work when you go home, etc. But you're 100% right. We're in an environment where for so long we've been working from home. And so how do you separate that? Because there's a lot of people that just are constantly, then in many respects, they're always on. They're always working, right? Really simple, Jason, but it's been a challenge for everyone.
Yeah, and again, you want to talk about stress, you got those people that are always on. One of the worst things you could ever do for yourself is always be on. And I'm talking not scheduling those breaks, not putting your own wellness in front of other parts of your day, not being able to split away and, recover. Fighting burnout is one of the biggest things that we need to do if you want to perform. If you want to relate it back to athletes and name any sport you love or any person you love who is high performer, they don't just grind for 30 or 40 years. They have strategic breaks. They need to peak at different times. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things is learning to recover, learning not to burn out, and keeping your medium, your average.
Well, to be honest, I think in the last 5, 6, 8 years type of thing, the focus, probably the biggest advancements in athletes isn't sort of the strength, the different strength gains or something like that. It's actually on the back end. It's the recovery process of what they're doing, recovering emotionally, recovering physically, sleep or meditation and things like that, to actually be able to allow their body to regenerate, because then obviously the next day they're going to perform better. So they're going to get better results because of that recovery. And I always think about the drugs in sports situation as well. And so much of it years ago used to be about performance enhancing drugs, but then so much of it became about drugs that were able to make people recover from training so they could do more and get better gains the following day. So I think in many respects, the drugs situation in many respects has shown us the way forward. If that, do you see what I'm trying to say? Like in many respects, it's like we now know how important it is on recovery. I'm not saying the drug stuff has been good by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's been more of that, looking at what it has created. There is a lot more focus on recovery. We know the importance of physical, emotional recovery, being able to get ourselves up when we need to be up and being able to switch off when we need to switch off and have those breaks, peaks and troughs, etc. yeah, maybe it's a bit of a different way of expressing it in that respect. But it's just something I've sort of felt over the years, that the drug side was all about, getting bigger or stronger. Then it sort of switched more into enabling athletes to recover so they could then do more the next day type scenario. I think of Tour de France and that type of stuff as well. But anyway, let's move on from that side of it. Mate, and obviously now you're doing a lot of work in the corporate health side of things. Where to from here? If you could, if I gave you a crystal ball right now and you could see what was moving forward, what do you think all of us should be doing? What would be a couple of tips or strategies or hints about where you feel we need to go and what's sort of most needed for us right now?
Perfect. I'm already in the midst of it. Like, I'm only 1 or 2 weeks away, depending on when this drops on your channels though, Jason, from creating a bit more of a proactive system that can look after businesses. Because if there's one thing I've noticed over the last number of years, let's be honest, 20 years in the workplace wellness sort of scenario, there's a lot of stuff out there which is very reactive in the workplace. So, there's the old ambulance at the bottom of the hill scenario.
Yeah.
And I see it, I understand it, I also know it's needed, but we are better than this. So I've actually created a completely new system, which is based on individual and also corporate collective personal development. So we can actually enhance people day in, day out, and drive better success through proactive work, proactive improvement. For me, that's the real big thing that we need to work on, because reactive stuff is no longer, it's I'm going to go as far as saying it's old, like boys club, old school stuff. It's good, but
and I'll support you on it. Yeah. Well, when you think about everything to do with what we do with, disease management and chronicity of injuries and things like that, everything's always been take a tablet, take a pill, treat what's there. But it goes that whole adage that you're talking about right now, that it should be about preventing everything, right? Preventative medicine as such.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking about nutrition is preventative, 100%. If you do it well, it's preventative. And that's why we do personalized nutrition plans for like 10 New Zealand dollars a month. Done and dusted. We look after people. We don't just offer it to the people at the workplaces we deal with. We offer it to all of their families and friends. For that reason, it's personal. In terms of everything else, far out, just, preventative work or proactive work is how I like to talk about it, is the key. And it's a bit like having your own personal coach and just taking little snippets of something that you're weaker on. Because when you do, I've got a new part of my business called Heal Me Well. It's going to be called healmewell.com, and every one of your staff will be able to do a full 360 health survey. And then from that, they actually get personal development videos on the 12 areas over 12 weeks where they scored lowest on. So they're the areas where we want to pick people up on. And as a whole, we can give data to your corporation, so we can know exactly where the team is as a whole, and then we can actually help them on as well. So it's going to be a powerful tool, awesome. And it's going to be exciting.
Fantastic, mate. Let's pull the pin on another podcast for this one, mate. I'm really keen to see how this all rolls out, and mate, if I can, I might even ask you now if we can get you back on. I'm really keen to be able to see how it all starts to roll forward with the new program and the proactive drive behind it. Really keen to be able to watch that space and help out as best we can, mate. So. Matt, once again, mate, your insights are fantastic. I love the work that you're doing. Keep leading from the front, mate, and we'll look forward to chatting with you soon.
Thanks, Jace.
Hey, guys. Thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Profitable Practice Podcast. I would love nothing more than for you to be able to leave a review. I get so much joy out of listening and reading the amazing things that you guys say about this. So please subscribe to our channel, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Let's get some more fantastic information out there so all of us can grow the industry together. Cheers for now.